If you want to learn to make soft solder jewelry, you are in the right place. My name is Laura Beth Love. I'm an expert in soft soldering, and I am the author of 4 jewelry making books, including the best-selling Soldering Iron Jewelry. And today I'm going to go over with you the very basic things that you need to get started soldering. There's a very small investment. You can get started on the cheap, and I'm going to go over with you right now just some of the things that you need. Now, the most basic thing you're going to need, obviously, is a soldering iron. I recommend an 80-watt soldering iron or above. They come in different wattages. If you get a very low watt iron, you are not going to be able to melt the solder to the liquid state and to be able to manipulate it the way that you will need to make soldering iron jewelry. So this is a generic iron. I will list down below some recommendations, or you can also in the lower left-hand corner click on the YouTube shopping link and I will link some suggestions there as well. Now, soldering iron, like I said, get an electric soldering iron, get 80 watts or above. I also have another video all about how to buy a soldering iron, and I will link that down below. So you get your soldering iron, you're gonna need a stand for your soldering iron, so when you're not using it and it's hot, like when you have to set it down, this is a really basic tiny little one that came with my iron. You can buy them separately, or usually you get one with your iron, but you definitely need to have something that you can set this on. So when I'm not working with it, I can just put it on here and that's gonna hold it. Next thing you're gonna need that I highly recommend is a rheostat. Sometimes you will have one built into the handle of your iron. You'll see it's like a little dial, or there'll be like a little button that you can use to adjust the temperature. You can also get an external rheostat. So this iron does not have anything on it. So this is just a regular soldering iron, and this is the rheostat. So you take the end of the iron cord and you plug it in here, and then the other cord, you plug it into your wall and you turn it on, and this way I can adjust the temperature. I can make it hotter, I can make it a little cooler, and those are temperature settings that you will need, especially when you're gonna do decorative soldering. So you definitely wanna have a rheostat. You can try to work without one, but I guarantee you, you're gonna get frustrated, and it's so much easier just to have the right tools. So get an iron, get a stand, get a rheostat. The next thing you're gonna need is solder. For soldering iron jewelry, we only ever use lead-free solder. It looks like this. There are different brands you can get. This one is called Silver Gleam. This is one that has copper, tin, and silver in it. This is jewelry grade. This is lead-free solder, which is safe for jewelry making. And there are also other lead-free solders at the hardware store. You should always look and see what is in them. I do recommend using those solders, and I recommend using them for when you're starting out and you're practicing and you're experimenting. If you're gonna wear the jewelry, or you're gonna sell the jewelry or give it away for someone else to wear, you always wanna use the best solder. You don't wanna use like plumber solder or something like that. And also, like I always say, know what's in your solder. You need to know what is in there, read the labels, look it up online if you don't see a label, and if you don't know what's in it, then don't use it. The next thing you're gonna need is flux. Flux comes in different forms. There's liquid flux, there's gel flux, there's paste flux. You might want to try them all and see which one you prefer. I like to use liquid flux, and you can get this from stained glass supply stores. You can get it on Amazon. Again, I'll leave links down in the YouTube shopping link down below in the description as well. You cannot solder without flux. So let's say you have a hot soldering iron, and you have your solder and you have your rheostat, and you turn your iron on and it's nice and hot and you're ready to solder and you want to melt the metal, and you can melt this metal. It's going to melt, but it's not going to stick to wire. It's not going to stick to other metal, anything, because you don't have flux. Flux works by removing the oxidation on your base metal, which would be, let's say we're using copper wire, which is one thing we use a lot when soldering, or silver plated wire, and you're going to take a little flux brush, which looks like this. This is just like an acid brush. You pour some flux into a small container. You never pour it into the lid. You never dip into the lid or dip into the bottle. You always want to use a separate container. You take your designated flux brush. This is only ever used for flux. Then once you use it for that, you don't use it for anything else, not for painting, not for other crafts, only for soldering. You dip it in there, you're gonna coat your metal, and then you can solder. Then you can take that soldering iron, hold it against this solder, and it's gonna melt, and it's gonna be wonderful. It's gonna work great for you. The next thing you're gonna need is a work surface. Now you need to have, obviously, a fireproof work surface. I always use a soldering mat. There's all different colors and different kinds. There's silicone. This is basically a small one. This one is really nice to start out with. You could get a bigger one if you're doing larger pieces. Say you make stained glass, you're gonna need, something that's a little bit bigger, but it's just a basic thin, under $30. You can get a good one, it'll last you forever. And you wanna use that as your work surface. So you never wanna solder on a table that is, directly onto a table or on. So I've seen people try to use like aluminum pans, and then your solder is just going to roll around, and it's an eyesore. You're not going to be able to differentiate the background from your soldering. So yeah, I like a contrasting color. Get gray, get black, even blue, whatever you like. So you need a soldering iron. You need a soldering iron stand. You need a rheostat for your soldering iron to control the temperature. You need flux. You need a soldering mat. You also need safety glasses. Of course, safety first and foremost. You want to always wear protection when you are soldering. You need eye protection, and you need breathing protection and hand protection. So safety glasses, run-of-the-mill safety glasses, those are fine. Something to cover your eyes. For breathing, soldering, the flux, the solder produces fumes, many that you cannot see. You have to wear a respirator mask. Also, you should have a fume extractor, which is like a small box on your soldering station, and that will suck all the fumes right up when you're soldering, and they will be filtered through a filter. If you don't have that, or you're working toward it because they could be a little pricey, you can use a regular household air purifier. I have one or two in my home that I love, and I run them just for allergens and to just, make the air nice and clean and to smell good. And sometimes when I want to solder at my kitchen table, I'll just pick that up and put it right in front of me, and I turn it on, and it will pull all the fumes through there. And it has to have a HEPA filter. That is how you know that it is one that's gonna, filter out the fumes. So yes, you want to have safety glasses, and you want to have a respirator, and you want to have some kind of fume extractor or an air purifier. You can also use a fan, work in a well-ventilated area, always, never in a real enclosed space. Open a window, put a fan on. Like I said in my last video though, what do fans do? They really just blow things around, right? They don't really suck up fumes. So you definitely want to have like an air purifier, or ultimately a fume extractor. And they're not all super expensive. You can get one that's a couple $100. You can get one for under $100, maybe even around 50 or less. So shop around. Again, I'll put some links down below. And that's what we need to get started. I recommend also having a pair of soldering pliers. These are just regular old pliers that you would use for jewelry making, but when you use them for soldering, and you're going to get flux on them when you're using them, because you're going to use them to hold your project with one hand while you take your soldering iron in your other hand, and then you can solder it, hold it steady, and these are going to get flux on them. They might get solder on them. So you want to only ever use these then for soldering. So you're going to keep them on your soldering station, keep your stuff all together, and then never again use these for jewelry making. So don't use your best pliers. Use an old junky pair. Get a cheap pair, and if they last a couple years, that's great. Then you can always replace them, but don't use good ones. Don't use expensive ones. After you use them for soldering, you don't ever want to use them for jewelry making again, because you will cross-contaminate. You'll get flux on your jewelry. So you don't want that. And that's basically what you need to get started soldering. Yeah, like I said, the soldering iron, the rheostat, the stand. I could go over it again and again. Make sure you have safety equipment. And one of the most important things is good instruction. I have tons of videos on soldering. I will do more beginner soldering videos. And my book, this one is from, I think, is this last year? No, this was the year before. Last year was the Broken China Jewelry book. This is Soldering Iron Jewelry, so this would have been from 2023. And this book is the complete course for how to make jewelry with a soldering iron. I teach you step by step everything you need to know, beautiful projects, and I always organize my projects so that the first one is the easiest, and then the last one is the ultimate hardest one in the book. So what you're doing is you start in the beginning, and then you work your way through, and you're learning from the very, very basic all the way up, building on skills and more techniques and skills with every project. So yeah, this is a great book. You can get it on Amazon. I will leave the link again down below in the description. And I have other books as well. I have, let me show you. I've been soldering for over 35 years probably. I started as a stained glass artist many, many years ago. And my first book that I published, I think this was around 2012, was Boho Chic Jewelry. This was a bestseller, and you can buy this one online. I believe you can get it used. You could also get like the digital download of it. You can buy that online. It's inexpensive. This is now, I believe, out of print. We sold very many copies of this, so this is a great book. And then my book following that was Soldered Alchemy, where I showed how to solder and combine it with wire wrapping, really basic wire wrapping, and has more of like kind of a mystical kind of spin on some of these projects, kind of a I don't know, kind of magical look to some of them. So yeah, this is another great book. And then, like I said, Soldering Iron Jewelry. This is the one you want if you want to learn how to solder. And even if you've never soldered before ever, and like this is the first time that you're, learning like what the tools are and what you need and how to do it, this book will explain it in detail, step by step. I wrote this book so that someone who has never soldered before can open this book and read and know step by step how to do it. And like I walk you through the entire journey of learning how to solder. And it's called soft solder because it melts at a lower temperature than hard solder, which is like sterling silver that you need a flame and a torch for. You don't need that for soft solder jewelry. You only need a soldering iron. But the soldering iron has to get hot enough to melt lead-free solder. You never want to use lead solder for jewelry making. It's poisonous. It is used for stained glass, but not for jewelry. And then my book that I released last year is, I'll show you quickly, this is the Broken China Jewelry book. I've had a Broken China jewelry business called Dysfunctional Designs for over 30 years. You can find me on Etsy, and I'll show you a piece. I have a piece right here that I just made. See if I can get a good shot of this. And I teach you step by step how to make jewelry from broken china. And this is a soldered piece of jewelry that's more of an advanced design, but you don't have to solder to make jewelry out of broken china. There's all kinds of other things. You can use adhesives, you can use resin, you can use, well, you have to get the book and see. There's lots of different projects in there. And then of course I have some great soldering projects in there as well. So my next book will be out in the next few months. It is decorative soldering. So once you learn how to solder and you really, you get your feet wet and you get a lot of practice in and you know what you're doing, that's when you start to like experiment and the creativity really starts to come in, and you're like, well, how about if I try to do this with the soldering iron and the solder? And how about if I try to do this? And there's ways that you can create decorative designs in your solder, such as this one. Where's that pendant that I just showed you? This is a real basic decorative soldering. So yeah, I'm gonna have a whole book on all different types of projects, all different types of decorative soldering, and I'm really excited for that to come out. It's gonna be a great book. And not only is it great for soft soldering for jewelry making, but you can also use every single technique in there, every kind of motif and design of decorative soldering for stained glass. So if you are a stained glass solderer and you've never used lead-free solder, you've never made soldered jewelry, now's the time to get started, and you're gonna get some great ideas in these books. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a little bit of a background now of what you need to get started soft soldering. Again, I'll go over it one more time. You're gonna need your soldering iron, 80 watts and above. If you can get a 100 watt iron, that's great. If you get a low wattage iron, like 40, 20 watts, or even 60 some watts, you're gonna have a hard time melting the solder. The solder comes on a roll like this, and it's a solid state. And then when this gets hot and you start to melt it, it gets like a pasty state. It starts to melt up a little bit. And unless you have a hot enough soldering iron of a high enough wattage, you're not gonna be able to melt it enough. It's gonna be just like pasty, and it's gonna be pointing, and it's not gonna be good for jewelry making. You wanna be able to manipulate this solder and make it molten liquid, and then be able to turn your iron cooler to make it more solid so that you can make decorative dots and all kinds of decorative things. And that's why you need a rheostat. They don't all look like this. This is just one that comes with an iron that I use. And you'll need, again, the iron stand, you will need flux, and you'll need a flux brush, and you'll need a soldering pliers, and you will need a mat for soldering. And lastly, I highly recommend a fabulous soldering book. This is the best one you can get. And this one is the only one that's specifically made for jewelry making, and it's new, and it has all of the up-to-date safety information and techniques and great projects too. So anyway, I hope this gave you a little bit of information. I know that soft soldering is becoming more popular and I'm super happy about that. I've been pushing it for many, many years and sharing my ideas and my projects and techniques, and I love to help other people learn. So if you have any questions or you have any comments, you can leave them down below. And if you like this video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell next to the subscribe button so you can get notified when I release a new video. So we'll be back soon. I will have a project coming up soon, a new soldering project. So get your soldering supplies and get started. Start learning how all of your tools and materials work. Get the book, start reading, and then come and join me and I will teach you more projects. So anyway, I hope you guys are staying cool this terribly hot, muggy summer that we've been having. At least here in Pennsylvania, it's been pretty rough. But I'm gonna move over and talk about some broken china jewelry in another video. I'm gonna share some of the projects from my broken china jewelry book. I'm gonna share a few of the projects from the soldering iron jewelry book. So check back and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.